Welcome to Chapter 3, MBA 543, St. Francis University. My name is Adam Conrad, and we're going to kick it off with a discussion on ethics, the foundation for partnering relationships that create value. So some of the objectives for this chapter is to explain the importance of developing a relationship strategy, describing issues that can challenge the ethical decision-making for salespeople, the factors that influence the ethical conduct of sales personnel, and we're going to describe how ethical decisions influence the building of partnering relationships and selling, and we're going to discuss some of the guidelines for developing a personal code of ethics that creates value. So let's jump in. So developing a relationship strategy, relationship skills are needed in today's complex sales environment. I've often said that people only buy from people they like, and I've often said that people buy from people. So if you're going to sell in today's selling environment, it's going to rely on individuals. So you're going to develop a relationship strategy with three key prescriptions: maintaining high ethical standards, projecting a professional image, and managing the relationship process. So emotional intelligence refers to the capacity for monitoring our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves and for managing emotions. Some of the qualities associated with high emotional intelligence listed there: self-awareness, self-confidence, trustworthiness, adaptability. Emotional intelligence in personal selling and most other business occupations, emotional intelligence is a great predictor of success. Information age selling involves three major challenges, but let's talk again a little bit about the emotional intelligence. So initiative, optimism, empathy, and well-developed social skills. One of the things I've often talked about in selling environments throughout is I've met some extremely brilliant, very knowledgeable people, genius people. And I've also met people that are not anywhere near genius level. And I can tell you that folks that work really hard and do what they say they're going to do will often outpace folks that have higher emotional intelligence. So while it might be that you're brilliant, if you have initiative and you work, you will find yourself much more successful than folks that are just simply brilliant. So it's very important that you pay attention to the fact that it's not just enough to be smart. It's that you also adapt that intelligence to actual sales environments and your work ethic to be successful. So some of the information age selling relationship challenges are building new relationships, transforming relationships, and managing relationships. Let's talk about each of these just a bit. When you attempt to build relationships, there's lots of challenges with that. So you're forging new relationships. How you get off on the right foot with people is extremely important. How you meet or where you meet people in a business environment, extremely important. Sometimes you know folks on a personal level, and you try to take that personal relationship and move it to a business level. Real estate's a perfect example of that. You may know somebody personally and find that they may have a professional relationship with another real estate agent. I think statistics show that average people in the United States will know anywhere from 5 to 10 real estate agents. So the likelihood that they'll use you because of a personal relationship might be strong, but they may also have a business relationship with somebody already. So it's important that you are able to move those personal relationships to business relationships. And also keep in mind that sometimes you move it to a business relationship and sometimes it can hurt your personal relationship. So moving on to some ethical challenges for salespeople. So some of the questions you might ask, what would you do if a customer, we start talking about ethics and we run into situations with customers, what would you do if a customer asks you to create a set of product specifications for completing a sales proposal, then a new supplier of yours indicates a sizable direct cash payment would be made to you if you listed the supplier's technical data in the specifications? So you might ask yourself, what would you do, and how would you respond to this? So one of the things that we teach in sales, and aside from this ethical dilemma here, we teach in sales is that if you're going to be successful selling complex products, it's very important to be in early in a process where a decision is going to be made and actually help set the specifications. And oh, by the way, wouldn't it be great if those specifications happen to match the products or services that you sell, helping form the specification. So it's very important early on to build that relationship and help build those specifications. We often say to salespeople who, we often ask the question, if you receive a RFP, a request for proposal that's unsolicited, it comes to you and you have no knowledge of this RFP or this set of specifications for a purchase, what are your chances of winning that bid? What are your chances of winning that business? The answer to that is very low, because if you had no knowledge that this bid was going out, you had no relationship with that client, somebody else probably helped set those specifications. So the chances of you winning that business are nil, in my opinion. It's very important to be in on the front end. So again, customers ask you to create a set of product specifications for completing a sales proposal. Then a new supplier of yours indicates a sizable direct cash payment would be made to you if you listed the supplier's technical data in the specification. So, this is a bit of an ethical dilemma because, somebody's offering you a direct cash payment. Frankly speaking, there's a way to embed this into your job. Part of what you're doing as a rep helping somebody set specification is consulting with them and developing what their specifications are, and hopefully your software or your service or your product matches those specifications rather than just sticking it in here and somebody writing you a check. So that's part of that ethical dilemma. All right, so maybe another example. How would you respond if you work with the research and development departments of the companies you call on and therefore are trusted with confidential information about strategic new product development? Then one of your larger clients has asked you if you could help them with a project by answering some questions about their competitors' research activities. How would you respond? So again, they're not saying in this example that they're going to offer you a cash payment, but clearly you have a large client that's basically saying, could you help me take advantage of what you know about another client? The problem that, not the least of which is the answer is no, but the problem with this is, should you agree to do this for your client, what have you essentially communicated to your larger client? That you're willing to share somebody else's confidential information. So if they have a stroke of genius here and think about it for a moment, that client should come to the realization that you would do the same thing against them. Wouldn't that be the case? So you can see the ethical dilemma that you're exposed to here. An additional ethical question. What would you do if you have visited the buyer twice and each time the person displayed a great deal of interest in your proposal? Then, during a recent negotiations meeting, the buyer hinted that the order might be signed if you could provide tickets to a national sporting event, given your company has a long-standing policy that gifts are not to be given under any circumstances. So, again, the answer should be glaringly no, but does it happen? I'm certain it happens. The other thing you have to think about is the long-term consequences of this behavior. So you signal to the client that every time a proposal comes up, you're willing to buy them off with tickets to a Steeler game or an Eagles game or whatever your game is. You give them these tickets, Super Bowl tickets, or whatever it is that they're looking for. I guarantee you that in the future, their hand's going to be out on the next purchase order or proposal. But again, the simple answer to this is no, but you have to think about the long-term consequences of your actions as well. Not only is it not the right thing to do, but what does it set the stage for? In each of these examples, you're going to have yourself a problem on an ongoing basis. So a foundation for ethical decision-making is ethics, the foundation for partnering, a relationship strategy that you have with a client, which is built on trust, a product strategy and a customer strategy, which is based on your gathering information from them, identifying their needs, and coming up with a strategy, and then presenting that to them that helps address their concerns and provides value to them, the presentation strategy. So some of the factors influencing the ethical behavior of salespeople Laws, contracts, and agreements. Clearly, there's a role model, and I often say this, this is something that's, I tell salespeople all the time, is that when you look at how your people behave, and whether it's ethics or whether it's overall behavior within a company, if you see the behavior of the staff at a company, they often mirror senior leadership or owners. So I have often said that when I interact with people at a company and I get less than favorable results, or I have a customer service experience that's just not good, or we have people that don't behave in a certain way, often you can come to the conclusion that senior management endorses that behavior. Now, you'll have people say, oh no, they probably don't know anything about it. My contention is they always know, or they should know. They're responsible to know, because role models are provided by top management. If top management behaves unethically, then you can expect that that's going to trickle down. Their company policies and practices will be set based on their leadership. Role models will be provided by their sales manager. So sales manager will communicate that this is, ethics are in force and this is what we do or not. Personal values of the salespeople also come into play, and who you hire. And the ethical conduct of your salespeople will be a direct reflection all the way up the chain, in my opinion. So you should not, maybe once in a while you'll have a situation where somebody acts unethically and that's an anomaly. But I will tell you that it's pervasive, that within a company you'll find that the behavior of your staff is directly reflective of senior leadership. There's just no question. Because it's a culture. Culture in a company helps dictate these, culture is the sum total of beliefs, values, knowledge, ethnic customs, and objects that people use to adapt to their environment. And so cultural differences can make building relationships more difficult, and they may present direct ethical challenges, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I want to talk about this culture for a second. Company culture gets back to the prior slide, and that's where the senior leadership sets the culture of the company with the ethics, with their policies and procedures, with their behavior. If the senior leadership does not decide proactively what the culture is going to be, the company will have a culture nonetheless. They just may not be influencing it in the way that they think they are, because you will have a culture whether you like it or not. I have thoughtfully approached that in the real estate business. My culture in my company is what we refer to as generosity and reciprocity. You're either generous and you're helpful and with people that are around you, with other agents, with clients, or you don't belong on our team. Because real estate's not a business where you clock in and you get paid at the end of the week. You don't work 40 hours and expect 40 hours pay. You have to do a lot of things along the way that you don't get compensated for. You have to be generous with your time and with your efforts in order to expect sometime down the road that those will bear fruit. So if you're not a generous person, you're going to have a very difficult time in the real estate business, because you can't do this and expect to be paid that. It doesn't work that way. So I've adopted this philosophy that you must be generous. And we have people that join us that may start out as being generous, but may be less generous in the future. We have people that aren't generous and they don't belong on our team. Because if you don't have the point of view that generosity is at the core of your principles, then you're going to have a very difficult time, in my opinion, in the real estate business, and you don't have a seat at the table with us. So I made it clear earlier, actually talked about it in an earlier time, where somebody had actually asked me for what I'll refer to as a direct bribe to actually get a purchase order approved. And so it's critical that you know what to do in advance of that event, because it's going to happen to you at some point. You need to know, how am I going to respond whenever somebody says, I'll get that approved for you, but what are you going to do for me? I'll get that sale done for you, I'll get that purchase order signed, but what are you going to do for me? It's going to be critical that you have an answer for that. Different cultures look at it different ways, and sometimes different parts of the country look at it different ways. I won't refer to where I was at the time. I was hit with that, but it didn't surprise me when I got hit with it. Folks essentially said, hey, this is how we do things around here. And that was a big surprise to me. I said, well, that's not how we do things. Ultimately, I didn't get the sale, but I sleep much better at night nonetheless, knowing that that's the case. Okay, so doing business in other countries. Well, here's an example, China. Be patient, and some tips. Be patient and avoid taking the initiative until knowing the rules. Be prepared for negotiations around meals, typically banquet style. Harmonious relationships matter to the Chinese. You introduce the oldest people first. You give gifts after transactions, and you must be careful of the meaning of gifts. So this is not a comprehensive primer on doing business in China. You do business with again, this is an example of working with a different cultural group. You want to get very versed in those practices before you approach any group culturally, because you may think that you're doing the right thing and actually have the exact wrong approach. So the point of this is really not to give you tips and tools on a specific cultural group, but rather, in my opinion, to be cognizant of the fact that you're going to interact with folks in different countries and different cultures that are going to do things a little bit differently. Legal issues. Doing business in a global marketplace continues to be an ethical and legal minefield. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act prohibits U.S. companies from using bribes or kickbacks to influence foreign officials. The United Kingdom Anti-Bribery Act prohibits any form of commercial bribery. So you have to keep in mind that these things, there's actually laws on the books that help, that are designed to help curb particular behavior. But you often hear folks complain because other countries don't adhere to the same standards. So you may be competing against a country, sales reps or a company from another country whose approach to this is completely different. It's 180 degrees opposite of what we believe, perhaps in what we'll call English-speaking countries. You get into other countries and it's a given that you must pay some sort of gratuity or some sort of honorarium in order to do business in certain areas. Again, your experience in the companies in which you work will help dictate that. And again, that will be the ethical standard within your company. So the influence of senior management, I talked about this earlier. Ethical standards tend to filter down from the top of an organization. Employees look to company leaders for guidance. I could give you dozens of examples of this from different companies in which I've been acquainted over the years. And I can absolutely tell you that the employees will absolutely mirror the standards of company leadership. I won't get into details, although I've got some great salty stories that I could tell. The organization's moral tone, as established by management personnel, is the most important single determinant of employee ethics. So again, whether employees feel like a certain behavior or conduct is permitted is directly reflected from senior management. Policies are put into place. So it's not, companies, the larger the company, it's likely to have a human resources department. It's going to have, you could have attorneys on staff. Again, all of those people are going to write policies, and they may write policies that are not reflective of the leadership of the company. And so, are they going to be enforced? How are they going to interplay with you as a staff member? So, company policies and practices can have a major impact on the ethical conduct of salespeople. Policies will typically cover things like distributor relations, customer service, pricing, and product development. And I may tell some less salty stories for when it comes to company policies. I'll use an example of a company I worked at. I ran in the sales department of a company, and we had a sales rep who got, let's say, inebriated around a bunch of customers and distributed, or how do you call it? They exhibited not professional behavior around a bunch of clients, and that got back to the senior executives at the company, and they institute a policy that employees are no longer allowed to drink, no longer allowed to purchase alcohol. But the way the policy came down was really interesting. So the policy was still that if a client you went out and you would purchase drinks with the client, you're still permitted to purchase drinks with the client, but the policy actually went into place that you were not allowed to purchase alcoholic beverages unless you were with clients, which was really kind of a forehead scruncher. So you really think, oh no, wait a second. The policy was really to keep people from overindulging around clients. And so instead, my salespeople were essentially told, hey, if you're out on the road and you're going to have a presentation the next day and you're going to go to Outback and have a steak, you can't have a beer with it because the company wouldn't reimburse you for that. And so from my standpoint, I was perplexed. I thought that we put this policy in place because we had employees behaving badly around clients with alcohol. That didn't seem to be the policy we put in place. So I instructed my salespeople to never eat alone, because that way they could always have a beer with their steak or have a drink with dinner. So in any case, it didn't have the intended outcome. In any case, Mutual of Omaha, example here, values for success. Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company. Executives provide their employees with a carefully worded document titled Values for Success to encourage ethical behavior. This document covers openness and trust, honesty, integrity, and a customer focus. So they've proactively put something out, basically talking about how they would like their staff to interact with others. Other things that you might get into when it comes to ethical challenges in selling. So companies can give you guidance on these and policies on these. Again, you're going to have your own moral compass in place as well to deal with these, because company policy can't always deal with everything you're going to come up with, that you're going to be faced with. Sharing confidential information. I gave an example why that's not a good idea. Not the least of which on its face it's not a good idea. You can see where that goes. Reciprocity. No, I just said that my company is based on generosity and reciprocity. So our concept is that you're generous and that you do things for others is really our concept. But reciprocity here is you have to be very careful when somebody does something for you and they expect something in return. And that's perfectly fine so long as those things are ethical. Bribery. And again, you always want to look at, from the standpoint of the company, if somebody's coming to you personally and saying, I'm going to give this to you, then you have to be very cautious about that, because the company's not expecting that you're personally gaining from things out there. They're expecting that you're out there as a representative for the company. Giving gifts, and there's certainly nothing wrong with small cursory gifts, but I work in a very regulated business and I own a business that I'm strictly prohibited from giving people any type of compensation. I own a title company and a closing company, and if a real estate agent brings us a closing, I'm not able to give them anything in return for that. So I can't give them gifts. It's breaking the law. Entertainment. And again, what is the notion of entertainment and the things that are involved with entertaining clients, and what's the limit to where you draw the line with entertainment? Business defamation, saying bad things about other businesses and being careful of that, and use of the internet. And not the least of which is social media and your portrayal of yourself on social media. So this is this is an opportunity as students to think real hard. I'm sure you've heard in other classes about what you're posting on social media has a forever lasting impression on the internet. So those things are out there. So your behavior, your college behavior that's posted online, your personal behavior will come into, your clients are going to Google you. They're going to Facebook stalk you. They're going to look you up on Instagram. They're going to look you up on social media. So how you're portrayed on there is extremely critical to your interactions with your clients. So the influence of values, your deep personal beliefs, your attitude, and your behavior all come into play in selling. And sometimes you may be real challenged when you talk about things like deep personal beliefs, and what you believe, and how those interact with you in your own when you're out selling. So your own deep personal beliefs and your values develop your attitude, can be destructive or versus constructive, and your behavior. So you're going to have to really take stock of this on a personal basis, and companies are very interested in how you manage this individually, because your behavior with your clients will absolutely result in sales or not sales. They'll absolutely result in long-term relationships or not with your clients. So making ethical decisions that build selling relationships. Again, business ethics comprises the principles and standards that guide behavior in the world of business. They help translate values into appropriate and effective foundational behaviors that build and strengthen partnering relationships in day-to-day life. And whether a specific behavior is right or wrong, ethical or unethical, is often determined by company leaders, the customers you're working with, the country you're working in, the community. It really can vary. So the bottom line is you need to develop a personal code of ethics. Your relationships come first. Your task is second. You must be honest with yourself and with others. And personal selling must be viewed as an exchange of value. So it's critical that people know that they can rely on you, and that you're not going to sell them out or their information out to their competitor. They don't want to deal with somebody who they feel that they can't trust. So in conclusion and review, we've explained the importance of developing a relationship strategy and described issues that challenge the ethical decision-making of salespeople and the factors that influence the ethical conduct of sales personnel. And that's the end of chapter 3.